Captain Marcus Reed stood at the viewing deck of his merchant ship, watching another convoy of alien vessels leave Luna Colony. The ships were massive, 10 times bigger than anything humans could build. They carried away tons of rare metals that his people had spent months mining from the dangerous asteroid fields. In return, the Galactic Trade Council had given them barely enough credits to buy fuel for the next journey. It was the same story every month, every year. For the past 30 years, Marcus clenched his fists as he watched the last ship disappear into hyperspace. His crew of 12 humans had worked day and night to fill those cargo holds. They had risked their lives in the vacuum of space, crawling through broken machinery and toxic mining tunnels. 3 of his men were still in the medical bay, recovering from radiation exposure. The aliens never thanked them. They never even looked at them directly. "Captain, we got another message from the Council," said Tom Wilson, his first officer. Tom was a good man, had been with Marcus for 8 years. His face showed the same tired anger that Marcus felt every day. "What now?" Marcus asked, though he already knew it would be bad news. "New tax rates. They want 40% more on all our shipments, starting next week." Marcus laughed, but there was no humor in it. 40% more? We're barely making enough to keep the ship running now. Down on the planet below, Ambassador, Elena Vasquez was having her own problems. She sat in the waiting room outside the Galactic Council chambers, just like she had done every day for the past 6 months. The aliens made her wait for hours, sometimes entire days, before they would see her. When they finally called her in, it was always the same. The council sat in their high chairs, looking down at her like she was some kind of insect. The archons were tall and thin, made of living crystal that sparkled in the light. They spoke in voices that sounded like breaking glass. The nebulans floated in their gas tanks, their bodies shifting like clouds. The synthetics were half machine, half organic, with glowing red eyes that never blinked. "Human representative," said Council Leader Vorthek, his crystal face showing no emotion. "We have reviewed your latest requests." Elena straightened her shoulders. She had been asking for the same things for months: fair trade agreements, equal representation in galactic decisions, an end to the crushing taxes that were destroying human colonies. "Your requests are denied," Vorthek continued. "Humans serve a useful purpose in the galaxy, but you must understand your place. You are laborers, not leaders." Elena felt heat rising in her chest. She had heard these words so many times before, but today, something was different. Today, she had received reports from every human colony in the galaxy. The stories were all the same: exploitation, abuse, being treated like slaves while the aliens grew rich from human work. "We provide 60% of the galaxy's mining operations," Elena said, keeping her voice steady. "We maintain your power. Grids, your communication systems, your transportation networks. How exactly does that make us just laborers?" The Nebulan representative, a being called Zorith, made a sound like wind through pipes. It was their version of laughter. "You do these jobs because you are suited for them. Your species can work in environments that would kill us. That does not make you our equals." "We have been patient," Elena said. "We have followed your rules, paid your taxes, accepted your terms, but our patience has limits." Vorthek's crystal body flashed with what Elena had learned was amusement. "Are you threatening us, human? Your entire species lives on worlds we allow you to inhabit. Your ships travel on routes we control. You exist because we permit it." Elena stood up slowly. For 30 years, humans had bent the knee to these beings. They had accepted scraps while building an empire for others. They had smiled and nodded while being treated like dirt. "We are not threatening you," she said quietly. "We are informing you. Yesterday, the Earth Defense Council voted unanimously. We are withdrawing from all current agreements with the Galactic Trade Council." The chamber fell silent. Even the constant humming of the synthetic representative stopped. "You cannot be serious," said Vorthek. "We have never been more serious," Elena replied. "For too long, we have mistaken your greed for authority. We have confused our willingness to work with weakness. That ends today." She turned and walked toward the exit. Behind her, she could hear the aliens talking in their various languages, their voices rising with what sounded like panic. At the door, Elena stopped and looked back. "You have 48 hours to consider new terms. Equal partnership, fair trade, and mutual respect. If you are not interested, then we will find our own way in this galaxy." "You need us more than we need you," Vorthek called after her. "Where will you go? What will you do?" Elena smiled for the first time in months. "We are human. We adapt." Far across the galaxy, the message was already spreading through encrypted human communication networks. On mining stations and colony worlds, in spaceports and research facilities, humans were reading the same simple words: "Operation Exodus begins in 48 hours." Dr. Lisa Chang read the message on her tablet while standing in the engineering section of a synthetic research station. She had been working here for 5 years, maintaining the quantum computers that the machines could not repair themselves. The work was difficult and dangerous, but she had stayed because the pay helped support her family back on Earth. Now, as she looked around at the massive computers humming around her, she felt something she had not felt in years. Hope. She sent a reply to the message: "Engineering Section 7, ready for departure." On the mining world of Titan 7, Foreman Jack Roberts gathered his crew of 200 humans. They had been working the deepest mines on the planet, pulling rare crystals from areas too radioactive for any other species to enter. The alien overseers treated them like expendable tools, sending them into dangerous situations without proper safety equipment. "Pack everything," Jack told his people. "We leave in 36 hours. "Where are we going?" asked one of the younger miners. Jack smiled. "Somewhere they treat us like people instead of machines." All across the galaxy, humans were making the same preparations. On 1,000 worlds, in 1,000,000 different jobs, they were quietly packing their belongings and saying goodbye to alien co-workers who had never bothered to learn their names. The aliens had made one critical mistake. They had assumed that humans would always need them more than they needed humans. They were about to learn how wrong they were. Ambassador Elena Vasquez walked through the corridors of Station Nexus, past aliens who were already starting to look worried. Word was spreading fast. The humans were leaving, and nobody knew what that meant for the galaxy. She thought about Captain Reed and his crew, about Dr. Chang and her quantum computers, about Jack Roberts and his miners. All across the stars, her people were preparing to show the galaxy what life looked like without human hands to keep it running. In 48 hours, the aliens would wake up to a very different universe. The first sign that something was wrong came at 0600 hours on the mining station orbiting Kepler 442b. Supervisor Krolthon, an Archon with bright blue crystal formations on his head, arrived at the central control room, expecting to find the usual team of human engineers starting their shift. The room was empty. Krolthon's crystal body flickered with confusion as he checked the duty roster. 23 humans were supposed to be working the morning shift. The mining operation required constant monitoring of the heavy machinery that dug deep into the planet's core. Without the engineers, the entire operation would shut down within hours. He tried calling the human quarters. No answer. He sent messages to their personal communicators. All came back undelivered. Growing worried, Krolthon walked to the residential section of the station. The human living areas were completely empty. Beds were made, personal belongings were gone, and there was no sign of struggle or emergency. It was as if 200 humans had simply vanished into space. 3 sectors away, on the gas processing facility in the Veil Nebula, Administrator Vacher was discovering the same thing. The Nebulan floated anxiously in his environmental suit. As he drifted through the empty corridors, where human technicians should have been working, the gas refineries were incredibly dangerous. The harvested gases from the nebula were toxic to most species and required specialized equipment to process. Only humans had proven capable of working in the harsh conditions for extended periods. Their natural resistance to radiation and ability to hold their breath for long periods made them perfect for the job. Now the refineries sat silent. The complex machinery that turned raw nebula gas into fuel for starships was slowly grinding to a halt. Warning lights flashed red throughout the facility as pressure levels began to fluctuate dangerously. Vashti tried to contact the human supervisor, a woman named Kelly Brooks who had run the operation for 8 years. Her office was empty, her desk cleared of all personal items. Even the coffee mug she always used was gone. On the other side of the galaxy, Captain Marcus Reed was leading his convoy of human ships through a route that no alien had ever seen before. 47 vessels of various sizes moved in perfect formation through an area of space that most navigation charts marked as uninhabitable. The ships were heading to Haven, a planet that humanity had discovered and colonized in secret 15 years earlier. While the aliens believed humans only lived on worlds they had been assigned, the truth was far different. Human explorers had found dozens of habitable planets in unexplored regions of space. Haven was beautiful. Green forests, blue oceans, and clean air that humans could breathe without assistance. More importantly, it was completely hidden from alien detection. The planet sat in a system surrounded by an asteroid field that blocked most scanning equipment. "Sir, we're receiving confirmation. Signals from all sectors," reported Tom Wilson from the communication station. "Operation Exodus is proceeding on schedule." Marcus nodded as he watched the data streaming across his screens. From every corner of the galaxy, human ships were departing alien stations and facilities. Mining crews, engineering teams, medical staff, researchers, maintenance workers, and trade specialists were all heading to predetermined rally points. The scale of the operation was breathtaking. Over 3 million humans were moving simultaneously, following evacuation plans that had been developed and refined for years. Every human worker in alien space had received detailed instructions months earlier. Emergency supplies had been stockpiled. Transportation had been arranged. Safe routes had been mapped. Dr. James Parker stood in the command center on Haven, watching the massive holographic display that showed human movements across the galaxy. As the former head of the Earth Colonial Development Office, he had spent the last 5 years planning for this day. "Status report," he called to his team. "Sector 7 complete," reported Lieutenant Sarah Kim. "All mining operations evacuated successfully." "Sector 12 clear," added Commander Robert Hayes. "Research facilities are offline." "Sector 25 confirms departure," said Dr. Maria Santos. "Last transport just jumped to hyperspace." One by one, the reports came in. Humans were leaving their posts across the galaxy, taking with them decades of knowledge and experience that the aliens had come to depend on. On the synthetic homeworld of Mechanicus Prime, the departure of human technicians was causing immediate problems. The synthetics were highly advanced artificial beings, but their technology was incompatible with much of the galaxy's infrastructure. Human engineers had served as translators, adapting synthetic systems to work with Archon power grids and Nebulan communication networks. Unit designation: Omega-7 stood in the central processing hub, watching error messages cascade across multiple screens. The hybrid being's mechanical parts whirred with increasing speed as it tried to understand what was happening. Query: location of human technical staff. Omega-7 transmitted to the facility's central computer. Response: human staff. Departed facility at 0430 hours. No return schedule provided. For a being that processed information at superhuman speeds, The concept of sudden departure without logical explanation was deeply disturbing. Omega-7 attempted to repair the failing systems itself, but the incompatible technologies refused to integrate properly. Across the galaxy, similar scenes were playing out on thousands of worlds and stations. The Archon crystal mines on Rigel 4 went dark when human operators abandoned the deep core drilling equipment. The Nebulan atmospheric processors on 6 different worlds began to malfunction without human maintenance crews. Synthetic manufacturing facilities ground to a halt as the humans who bridged the gap between different alien technologies simply disappeared. Ambassador Elena Vasquez received regular updates as her ship traveled toward the emergency session of the Earth Defense Council. The reports painted a picture of an exodus so complete and well coordinated that alien governments were struggling to understand what was happening. "Ma'am, we're getting urgent communications from alien officials," her aide, David Chen, reported. "They're demanding explanations." "Let them demand," Elena replied calmly. "They've had 30 years to treat us with respect. Now they can see what the galaxy looks like without us." The most striking thing about the human departure was how quiet it was. There had been no angry speeches, no dramatic confrontations, no acts of sabotage. Humans had simply finished their shifts, packed their belongings, and left. They had not damaged any equipment or stolen any resources. They had just stopped working. On the trading station Deep Space Nine, alien merchants were beginning to panic. The station relied on human crews to load and unload cargo ships, maintain the complex docking systems, and operate the translation equipment that allowed different species to communicate. Now the docking bays were empty. Cargo ships waited in space, unable to safely dock without human traffic controllers. The translation systems had crashed, leaving different alien species unable to understand each other. Even the station's environmental systems were beginning to fail, without human technicians to maintain them. Station Administrator Tai Sek, a tall Archon with silver crystal formations, found himself in his office trying to manually operate systems he had never bothered to learn about. He had always assumed the humans would be there to handle such details. His attempts to contact human supervisors were met with only silence. Every human on the station had vanished overnight, leaving behind a complex facility that the aliens could not operate on their own. In the Outer Rim territories, human mining crews had abandoned operations on 17 different asteroid fields. These fields provided rare minerals essential for faster-than-light travel. Without human miners willing to work in the dangerous radioactive environments, the supply of these critical materials would dry up within weeks. The aliens had never developed technology to safely mine these asteroids. The work was too dangerous, requiring workers who could survive in extreme conditions while operating complex machinery. Humans had filled this role so completely that other species had never bothered to develop alternatives. Director Kamal Singh stood on the observation deck of Haven's primary space station, watching as the last wave of human ships arrived from the outer sectors. The massive operation was nearing completion, and the results were already visible across the galaxy. "Sir, we're receiving the final reports," his assistant informed him. "All human personnel have been successfully evacuated from alien facilities. Total participants, 3.2 million people." Kamal nodded with satisfaction. The operation had taken 5 years to plan and 3 days to execute. Not a single human had been left behind, and not a single life had been lost during the evacuation. "What about alien responses?" he asked, confusion mostly. "Some stations are trying to operate without us, but critical systems are already failing. We're monitoring their communications, and panic is starting to set in." Kamal looked out at the stars, knowing that somewhere out there, the galaxy was beginning to realize just how dependent they had become on human expertise. For 30 years, humans had been treated as disposable labor. Now the aliens would learn the true cost of that arrogance. 1 week after the humans disappeared, the first power grid failed. It happened on Archon Prime, the crystal homeworld of the galaxy's most powerful species. The massive fusion reactors that powered their floating cities had been designed by human engineers 50 years earlier. The Archons had never bothered to learn how they worked, trusting that humans would always be there to maintain them. Now, with no human technicians to monitor the complex systems, Reactor Complex 7 began to overheat. Warning alarms echoed through the crystal spires as emergency systems tried to compensate for the rising temperatures. But the backup protocols had been written in human language, and no Archon could understand the technical manuals. Chancellor Kethver stood in his crystal palace, watching the lights flicker as power fluctuated throughout the city. His advisors crowded around him, their crystalline faces reflecting the red emergency lights that had begun flashing an hour ago. How long before complete failure? Kethver asked his chief engineer, Morden, unknown chancellor. The human supervisor left. No instructions. We cannot read their technical documentation. Kethver's crystal body darkened with anger and fear. Find someone who can read human writing. Offer them anything they want. Sir, we have tried. There are no humans left in this sector. They are all gone. The situation on Archon Prime was being repeated across dozens of worlds. The Nebulan gas cities in the Horsehead Nebula lost their atmospheric processors when the delicate balance of gases began to shift. Without human technicians who understood the complex chemistry involved, entire cities started to suffocate as their air became toxic. Elder Vashmer floated in his emergency chamber, breathing from a portable gas tank while his advisors tried desperately to contact any human who might help them. The atmospheric processors were failing one by one, and the Nebulans had no idea how to fix them. Send messages to all human worlds, Vashmer ordered. Offer them double pay, triple pay, whatever they want. But the messages came back undelivered. Earth's communication systems were no longer accepting transmissions from alien governments. 2 weeks into the crisis, the synthetic collective faced their own devastating problem. Their vast computer networks, which connected billions of artificial minds across the galaxy, began to crash. The problem was in the interface software that allowed synthetic technology to communicate with alien systems. This software had been written entirely by humans. It was incredibly complex, requiring an understanding of both organic thinking patterns and machine logic. The synthetics, despite their advanced artificial intelligence, could not replicate the intuitive problem-solving abilities that humans brought to the task. Prime Unit Alpha 1 stood in the central processing chamber, watching as communication links with distant synthetic worlds went dark one by one. Each failed connection meant thousands of artificial beings cut off from the collective consciousness that defined their existence. Analysis. Human departure has created critical system failures, Alpha 1 reported to the collective. Recommendation. Immediate contact with human leadership required. Response. Human leadership not responding to communication attempts. Came the reply from the failing network. The economic collapse began in the 3rd week. Trade routes that had operated for centuries ground to a halt as the complex logistics systems broke down. These systems had been maintained and operated almost entirely by humans, who had a unique ability to coordinate between different alien species and their incompatible technologies. The Grand Bazaar on Station Nexus, once the busiest trading hub in the galaxy, stood nearly empty. Cargo ships floated uselessly in space around the station, unable to dock because the automated systems had failed. The alien merchants who remained could not operate the loading equipment, translate between different species, or even maintain the basic life support systems. Trader Yexino, a successful Nebulan merchant, floated in his shop surrounded by goods he could no longer sell. Without human logistics coordinators, he could not get his products to other worlds. Without human translators, he could not communicate with customers from other species. Without human technicians, even his shop's basic systems were beginning to fail. "This cannot continue," Yuxinol said to his assistant. "We must find the humans and bring them back." But nobody knew where the humans had gone. They had vanished so completely that alien intelligence agencies were beginning to wonder if humanity had been destroyed by some unknown enemy. The food shortages started in the 4th week. Many alien worlds depended on agricultural products, grown on human colonies or in human-operated hydroponic facilities. These facilities used advanced growing techniques that humans had developed over decades of experimentation. Without human farmers and technicians, the hydroponic farms began to fail. Crops died as nutrient levels became unbalanced. Automated harvesting equipment broke down without regular maintenance. Even the seed banks, carefully maintained genetic libraries of thousands of plant species, began to deteriorate without proper care. On the Archon world of New Crystal, food riots broke out as supplies dwindled. The beautiful crystal beings had never learned to grow their own food, depending entirely on imports from human agricultural worlds. Now, with those imports cut off and local food production failing, even the most basic nutrition was becoming scarce. Council leader Vorthek stood before his advisors in the emergency session chamber, his crystal body flickering with stress patterns. In just 1 month, the mighty Archon Empire had been reduced to begging for help. "Status report," Vorthek demanded. "Power failures on 15 worlds," reported his aide. "Food shortages on 8 more. Transportation networks failing in 12 sectors. And the humans? Still no response to our communications. Earth's government refuses all contact." The truth was becoming clear to even the most arrogant alien leaders. Humans had not been simple laborers. They had been the invisible foundation that held galactic civilization together. Their ability to work in dangerous environments, adapt to new technologies, and solve complex problems had made them indispensable. The synthetics were the first to truly understand the scope of the disaster. Their analytical minds could process the cascading failures and project the inevitable outcome. Without humans, galactic civilization would collapse within 6 months. Alpha 1 transmitted an urgent message to all synthetic units. Critical error in assessment of human value. Previous classification of humans as expendable labor incorrect. Humans essential for continued operation of galactic infrastructure. But understanding the problem and solving it were different things. The synthetics could not replicate human intuition. The Archons could not match human adaptability. The Nebulans could not duplicate human resilience. Mining operations across the galaxy had stopped completely. The dangerous work of extracting rare minerals from asteroid fields and toxic planets required humans who could survive in environments that would kill other species. Without these materials, the production of starships, communication equipment, and even basic electronics ground to a halt. The deep space mining station, Omega-7, drifted silent and empty in the asteroid belt of the Ross system. The massive mining ship sat motionless, their human crews long gone. The asteroids they had been mining contained rare Earth elements essential for faster-than-light engines. Without these elements, interstellar travel would become impossible. Within months. Station Commander Verkith, an Archon with silver crystal formations, stood alone in the control room, looking out at the abandoned mining equipment. His species had the technology to build the mining ships, but they could not operate them in the harsh radiation environment of the asteroid field. Communication networks began failing in the 5th week. The galaxy-wide information systems that allowed instant communication between distant worlds required constant maintenance and upgrading. Human technicians had managed these networks, adapting the systems as new technologies were developed and fixing problems as they arose. Without human maintenance, the communication relays began to malfunction. Some sectors lost contact with the rest of the galaxy completely. Others could only send simple messages before their systems crashed. The complex translation protocols that allowed different species to understand each other stopped working. Emperor Zethara of the Nebulan Confederation found himself unable to communicate with his own military commanders on distant worlds. The gas-based communication systems that his people used could not interface with the solid-state networks preferred by other species. Human technicians had bridged this gap for decades, but now the connections were failing one by one. The medical crisis began when alien hospitals could no longer treat patients from other species. Human doctors had been the galaxy's medical translators, understanding the biology of different alien races and developing treatments that worked across species lines. Dr. Yethriel, the chief medical officer on Station Nexus, stood helplessly as a synthetic patient lay dying on the examination table. The artificial being's hybrid organic-mechanical systems were failing, but Yethro's knowledge was limited to Archon physiology. The human doctors who understood synthetic biology were gone. "Can we contact any human medical personnel?" Yethrul asked his assistant. "All human medical staff departed 3 weeks ago. No forwarding information available." As the 5th week ended, desperate alien governments began sending increasingly frantic messages to Earth. They offered massive payments, technology transfers, and even political concessions. But Earth's government maintained complete silence. The galaxy's most powerful civilizations, species that had ruled star systems for millennia, found themselves helpless without the humans they had dismissed as expendable laborers. The beings who had treated humanity with contempt now faced the collapse of everything they had built. In the empty corridors of abandoned space stations, on the silent mining worlds, in the failing cities of a dozen alien homeworlds, the same realization was dawning. Humanity had not been dependent on the galaxy. The galaxy had been dependent on humanity. The day humanity's patience snapped, and the galaxy will never forget. On the 6th week, they came, the first alien sensors detected. Them at the edge of the Centauri system. 50 human ships, moving in perfect formation toward the Galactic Trade Council's emergency session on Station Nexus. The ships were unlike anything the galaxy had seen before, where Archon vessels were built like floating crystals and nebulan. Ships resembled organic bubbles. Human ships looked purely functional. Clean lines, efficient design, and weapon systems that seemed to bend the very laws of physics. Most shocking of all, the ships moved together as if controlled by a single mind. Admiral Rebecca Stone stood on the bridge of the flagship New Dawn, watching the emergency fleet assembled around Station Nexus. Hundreds of alien warships had gathered, representing every major power in the galaxy. They had come expecting to intimidate humanity into returning to work. They were about to learn how wrong they were. "Admiral, we're receiving multiple hail attempts from the alien fleet," reported Communications Officer David Park. "Ignore them," Rebecca replied calmly. "We're not here to talk to their military. We're here for the Council." The human fleet moved past the alien warships without slowing down. When several Archon ships moved to intercept them, something extraordinary happened. The human ships simply vanished from sensors for a moment, then reappeared behind the alien formation. On the bridge of the Archon flagship Crystal Sword, Captain Velenoth stared at his scanner displays in disbelief. How did they do that? He demanded. His sensor operator's crystal face flickered with confusion. "Unknown, sir. Our instruments show they never moved, but visual confirms they changed position." The human ships took positions around Station Nexus, not in an attack formation, but in a perfect defensive sphere. Each ship was exactly the same distance from the station, creating a geometric pattern that was both beautiful and terrifying in its precision. Inside the council chambers, the galaxy's leaders waited in growing panic. Council leader Vorthak had called this emergency session to discuss the human crisis, but none of them had expected humanity to respond with a military demonstration. "They're requesting permission to dock," reported the station's Nebulan controller. "Granted," Vorthak said immediately. He had no choice. With the station's systems failing and his own fleet apparently helpless against human technology, resistance was pointless. The human delegation that entered the council chambers was small but impressive. Admiral Rebecca Stone led the group, followed by Ambassador Elena Vasquez and Dr. James Parker. Behind them walked 5 other humans, each representing different aspects of human civilization. The aliens had grown used to seeing humans in work clothes, covered in grease and radiation burns from their dangerous jobs. These humans wore clean uniforms and carried themselves with quiet confidence. They looked like representatives of a major power, not like the laborers the aliens remembered. "Honorable Council," Admiral Stone began, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber. "We come to discuss the future of human-alien relations." Vorthak's crystal body flashed with anger. "You come after abandoning your duties and causing chaos. Across the galaxy, billions of beings are suffering because of your actions." Dr. Parker stepped forward. "Billions of beings are suffering because they built their civilization on the backs of people they considered inferior. We did not cause this crisis. We simply stopped enabling it." The Nebulan representative, Elder Zondar, made the sound that indicated extreme agitation. "You were paid fairly for your services. You had homes on good worlds. What more did you want?" "Respect," Elena Vasquez said simply. "Equal treatment. A voice in decisions that affected our people. These are not unreasonable requests." "You are a young species," said Prime Unit Beta 5 of the Synthetics. "In galactic terms, you have existed for mere moments. How can you claim equality with civilizations that are millions of years old?" Admiral Stone smiled coldly. "Age does not equal wisdom. Your millions of years of existence did not teach you how to maintain your own technology. Our few centuries of development created systems you cannot live without." She gestured to a holographic display that appeared in the center of the chamber. It showed the current state of the galaxy, with failed systems marked in red. Nearly 60% of galactic infrastructure was highlighted. "This is what your galaxy looks like without human involvement," Stone continued. "Power grids failing, communication networks down, trade routes abandoned, medical systems crashed. You have 6 weeks of supplies remaining before complete societal collapse." The alien leaders stared at the display in shocked silence. They had known the situation was bad, but seeing it presented so clearly was devastating. "What do you want?" Vorthak asked quietly. Dr. Parker activated another display, this one showing a formal document. "The Human Charter for Galactic Cooperation. Equal representation in the Galactic Council. Fair trade agreements with no discriminatory taxation. Recognition of human colonies as sovereign territories. And most importantly, an end to the practice of treating any species as expendable labor." "These terms are outrageous," protested Elder Zondar. "You ask for rights equal to species that have ruled the galaxy for eons." "We ask for rights equal to our contributions," Elena replied. "For 30 years, humans have maintained galactic civilization while being treated as second-class citizens. That era is over." The synthetic representative's red eyes glowed brighter as it processed the information. "Analysis suggests human demands are reasonable given current dependency levels. However, implementation would require fundamental changes to galactic power structures." Admiral Stone nodded. "Exactly. The old system was built on exploitation and hierarchy. We propose something better, cooperation between equals." She activated a third display, showing technological schematics. "We offer full access to human adaptive technologies, environmental suits that allow any species to work in dangerous conditions. universal translation systems that actually work between all known languages, medical techniques that can treat any form of life. The alien leaders leaned forward, studying the displays with growing interest. The technologies shown were decades ahead of anything they possessed. "You would share these innovations?" asked Vorthek. "With species that agree to the charter," Dr. Parker confirmed. "We believe the galaxy will be stronger when all beings are treated with dignity and respect." Elder Zondar's gas form swirled with agitation. "And if we refuse your terms?" Admiral Stone's expression remained calm. "Then you continue as you are. We will establish our own trade networks with species that value cooperation over domination. The galaxy is large enough for multiple civilizations." "You would divide the galaxy?" Vorthek's crystal body flickered with alarm. "You divided it long ago," Alina pointed out, "into rulers and servants, valuable species and expendable ones. We simply refuse to accept the role you assigned to us." Beta 5 spoke with mechanical precision. "Probability analysis indicates galactic civilization has 34% chance of survival without human participation. Alternative scenarios show 87% improvement in overall efficiency with human cooperation." The chamber fell silent as the alien leaders absorbed this information. For centuries, they had assumed their dominance was natural and permanent. Now they faced a choice: adapt or watch their civilization crumble. "We need time to consider," Vorthek said finally. Admiral Stone shook her head. "Time is a luxury you don't have. Your infrastructure continues to fail every day we delay. Choose now, partnership or isolation." Dr. Parker added quietly, "We are not your enemies, we never were. But we will no longer be your servants." The human delegation stood waiting as the alien leaders whispered among themselves in their various languages. Outside the station, the human fleet maintained its perfect formation, a visible reminder of humanity's new capabilities. Finally, Vorthek spoke. "What guarantees do we have that you will honor these agreements?" "The same guarantee you gave us for 30 years, Alina replied with a slight smile. "Our word. But unlike our previous relationship," Admiral Stone added, "this one will be between equals. Mutual benefit instead of exploitation. Shared prosperity instead of one-sided extraction." The alien leaders exchanged glances, their ancient pride warring with practical necessity. The galaxy was dying without human expertise, and they all knew it. The choice was no longer whether to accept human demands, but whether to accept them gracefully or wait until desperation forced their hand. 6 months later, the galaxy looked completely different. Captain Marcus Reed stood on the bridge of his new ship, the Unity, watching a mixed crew of humans, Nebulans and synthetics work together to load cargo at New Geneva Station. The station itself was a marvel of cooperative engineering, built with human adaptability, Nebulan atmospheric technology, and synthetic computational power. "Captain, we have clearance for departure," reported his first officer, Tom Wilson. Standing beside Tom was Zekhan, a young Nebulan who had volunteered to learn human navigation techniques. The two beings worked together seamlessly, sharing knowledge that benefited both their species. Marcus smiled as he watched the efficient cooperation. 6 months ago, such a scene would have been impossible. Now it was becoming normal across the galaxy. The change had not been easy for everyone. Some species had accepted the human charter immediately, recognizing the practical benefits of cooperation. Others had resisted, clinging to the old ways until their civilizations nearly collapsed. Archons had been among the most stubborn. Council leader Vorthek had initially refused the human terms, declaring that his ancient species would never bow to primitive upstarts. His crystal cities had continued to lose power while he searched for alternatives to human expertise. It took 3 months of rolling blackouts and food shortages before Vorthek finally contacted Ambassador Elena Vasquez. The proud Archon leader had swallowed his pride and signed the charter, becoming the last major power to join the new Galactic Order. Elena now sat in her office on Station Nexus, which had been rebuilt as the headquarters of the reformed Galactic Council. Through her window, she could see construction ships from a dozen different species working together to expand the facility. Human engineers worked alongside Archon crystal shapers and Nebulan gas flow specialists to create something unprecedented, a truly integrated multi-species facility. "Ma'am, we have the weekly reports," said her assistant, David Chun. He placed a tablet on her desk showing statistics from across the galaxy. The numbers were remarkable. Trade between human and alien worlds had increased by 400% in just 6 months. Scientific cooperation had led to breakthroughs in energy production, medical technology, and space travel. Most importantly, workplace fatalities had dropped by 80% as humans shared their safety technologies with other species. On the synthetic homeworld of Mechanicus Prime, Prime Unit Alpha 1 processed the quarterly efficiency reports with what could only be described as satisfaction. The integration of human intuitive problem-solving with synthetic computational power had exceeded all projections. Analysis complete. Alpha 1 transmitted to the collective. Human-synthetic cooperation. Protocols have increased system efficiency by 347%. Recommendation: expand cooperative programs to all sectors. The synthetics had embraced the partnership more enthusiastically than any other species. Their logical minds appreciated the practical benefits of human creativity, while humans valued the synthetics' precision and reliability. Together, they had solved engineering problems that had puzzled scientists for centuries. Dr. Lisa Chang worked in a joint research facility on Haven's moon, collaborating with a team of synthetic researchers on a new type of faster-than-light engine. The project combined human innovative thinking with synthetic mathematical precision, creating technology that neither species could have developed alone. "The quantum resonance patterns are stabilizing," Lisa reported to her synthetic colleague. "Unit designation Gamma 12, confirmed. Human intuitive adjustments have improved efficiency by 23% over calculated optimal parameters," Gamma 12 replied. "This suggests human cognitive processes access mathematical relationships that formal logic cannot quantify," Lisa laughed. "We call it having a hunch. Sometimes you just know something will work without being able to prove it." Fascinating. This hunch phenomenon requires further study. The collaboration between humans and other species was creating innovations across all fields. Medical centers now employed mixed teams that could treat any form of life. Engineering projects combined the best ideas from multiple civilizations. Even art and culture were flourishing as different species shared their perspectives. On the former mining world of Titan 7, Foreman Jack Roberts supervised a revolutionary new operation. Instead of humans working alone in dangerous conditions, mixed teams used advanced safety equipment to extract resources more efficiently than ever before. Archon crystal sensing technology helped locate valuable deposits, while human mining techniques extracted them safely. "Production is up 40% from last month," Jack reported to his supervisor during their weekly video call. Behind him, human and alien workers operated equipment that was far more advanced than anything they had used before. The transformation was not limited to major industrial operations. On thousands of smaller worlds, farming communities shared agricultural techniques that increased food production while reducing environmental damage. Human drought-resistant crops grew alongside Nebulan atmospheric processors and Archon soil. Enrichment crystals. The most dramatic change was in space exploration. Joint human-alien crews were mapping new regions of the galaxy, discovering resources and habitable worlds that no single species could have found alone. The combination of human adaptability, alien technology, and cooperative planning was opening Frontiers that had been impossible to reach before. Admiral Rebecca Stone commanded the exploration fleet from her flagship, now called the New Horizons. Her crew included representatives from every major species, working together to chart unknown space. The ship itself was a masterpiece of cooperative engineering, incorporating the best technologies from across the galaxy. "Admiral, we're detecting a potentially habitable system in Sector 47, reported Lieutenant Sarah Kim, working alongside her Nebulan partner Yethavol. "Confirmed," added the synthetic navigation officer. "Probability of suitable worlds, 73%. Rebecca smiled as she watched. Her diverse crew worked together. "Set course for the new system. Let's see what we can find." Not every alien civilization had joined the new order. Some species, too proud or too set in their ways, had rejected the human charter and tried to continue on their own. These holdout civilizations struggled with failing infrastructure and declining populations as their most skilled workers. Left to join more progressive societies, the hegemony of Zakan had refused all cooperation, declaring humans to be unworthy of association with superior beings. Their empire, once spanning dozens of star systems, had shrunk to a handful of worlds as their technology broke down and their people emigrated to human-allied territories. Emperor Zarthik still ruled from his palace on the hegemony capital, but his empire was a shadow of its former self. His communications with other alien leaders went unanswered, and his military could barely maintain order on their remaining worlds. Meanwhile, former hegemony citizens who had joined human communities thrived in the cooperative environment. They brought valuable knowledge and skills that enhanced the growing alliance, while learning new techniques that improved their own capabilities. Dr. James Parker stood in the main assembly hall of the Reformed Galactic Council, addressing representatives from 127 different species. The hall itself represented the new spirit of cooperation, with environmental controls that allowed gas breathing, crystal-based and organic life forms to gather in the same space. 6 months ago, this galaxy was on the edge of collapse, Parker said to the assembled delegates. Today, we are stronger than we have ever been. Not because any one species dominates, but because we work together as equals. The response was a harmony of sounds, Archon crystal chimes, Nebulan wind-like whispers, synthetic electronic tones, and human applause. It was the sound of unity among diversity. Ambassador Elena Vasquez watched from the diplomatic section, remembering the day she had walked out of these same chambers in frustration. Now she sat as an equal among the galaxy's leaders, helping to guide a civilization based on mutual respect rather than exploitation. Captain Marcus Reed continued his trade routes, but now his ships carried more than cargo. They carried hope, connecting worlds and species in networks of friendship and commerce. His crews were training centers where different species learned to work together, sharing knowledge and building understanding. On Earth, children learned about the day their species stood up for itself and changed the galaxy forever. They studied the lesson that power based on fear and exploitation would always be fragile, while strength built on cooperation and mutual respect could last forever. The galaxy had learned that humanity's greatest strength was not their technology or their adaptability, but their belief that all intelligent beings deserve dignity and respect. This belief, once dismissed as naive idealism, had become the foundation of a new galactic civilization. And in the vast spaces between the stars, new ships flew with mixed crews, carrying the promise of a future where no species would ever again be considered expendable.